Well, welcome to our fireside chat. I see no fire, no, but there will be a chat anyway. This is Carla Cuglietta, a Canadian-born educator. She's a former school teacher,
yes,
and the founder of an international nonprofit called YoungLeaders.World. YoungLeaders.World. She's also a principal consultant in the Inform series, and prior to the pandemic, she concluded a visit to 12 countries, and took her 12 months, I understand, to do a study on the future of work and education. Carla has been awarded the Canadian Prime Minister's Certificate of Achievement and the University of Alberta Alumni Award of Distinction. And that was for her work in youth leadership and education. And when Carla speaks about youth leadership, I understood it to mean skills that, not in the traditional meaning of the word, but leadership of themselves. The cultivation of self-awareness, a self-awareness that will help young people navigate through their lives. Correct? And we discussed together the interesting phenomenon of students who are taken care of by their schools, their universities all their lives. During their student days, they are curated, they are given pastoral care, and then they are let loose in the world, a world full of difficulties, full of dilemmas, full of difficult questions. Are they prepared for this? And this is what she's trying to prepare them for. In a way, Carla is helping young people achieve the Socratic know thyself, gnothi safton, as we say in Greek. So, Carla, tell us more about your work.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be here in Greece to talk about this, you know, the birthplace of academia and education. So, as mentioned, I work on preparing students for the future through education. And I come to you this evening with three different lenses. The first is of someone who taught high school, mainly grade 11 and 12, for 16 years. That's the first lens that I come to this conversation with. The second lens that I come with is someone who works quite a bit on international development, grassroots projects with people all over the world, in India, Sierra Leone, Uganda, etc. And the third is as executive director and founder of YoungLeaders.World, where our main goal in this organization is to help young people understand leadership, the mindset of leadership. So we have leader, the position, the noun, and then we have leadership, which is the verb, something that we can do, competencies, a way to live our life. And so that organization works with thousands of young people all around the world to understand leadership and life navigation. So those are the three lenses that I come to this conversation with to talk about just some insights on where I feel like the future of education should go to better prepare our young people. I have a question for you. I know you're supposed to be asking me questions, but I'm going to start with asking you a question. Were you excited to graduate when you graduated grade 12 or university? You don't have to tell us how long ago that was. Just
It's so long ago that I probably have forgotten if I was excited. No, I'm sure I was very excited. I think I was extremely excited.
Yes.
And the reason is that in those days, you know, we didn't really have we didn't have a care in the world. I mean, we thought we would find work, we will go out of school, we will, you know, first of all, we were enjoying themselves. And secondly, we thought work was around. We will find some work.
It was somewhat straightforward.
We didn't have the agonies that young people have today. The agonies of what's going to happen with me? Will I find work? What kind of work will I have?
Right.
So
So you were excited.
I was excited.
I was excited. I was excited for grade 12 graduation. I was also very excited to graduate from university. Yeah. And that was the norm for a lot of young people for a lot of years. And then in about 2014, 15, when I was teaching high school, I started to notice that excitement to graduate fade into other feelings. Feelings of anxiety about entering the world of work and what that would look like. Feelings of apathy about all of the things happening in the world and not knowing how to deal with them. So that is when I shifted my focus as a traditional teacher in the education system to someone who focused purely on education and on leadership education and helping young people prepare for life and to be good global citizens. And so how were we to start dealing with what used to be excitement and what's now anxiety and apathy for young people? So because I was a teacher for so many years, I've prepared a few visuals for those of you who are visual learners. I came up with a metaphor for how education has gotten us to where we've been, and it's worked quite well, and how it might not be preparing kids in the way that they used to be. So the metaphor is this: school is like a river, like we spoke about, and it's got narrow banks on either side, and we have teachers and parents and pastoral care, and it's this curated experience. We go into this river in kindergarten or grade 1, and we have a current that gently guides us through grade 1 to grade 2, grade 5 to grade 6, grade 11 to grade 12. There's always this current that just keeps pushing you forward. And in a lot of ways, you know, if you get 55% or 95% in a lot of countries, you're still going to just keep moving forward with that current. And that current was supposed to prepare you to let out into the sea. The river was meant to prepare you to swim in the sea, which is life after school. And so for a lot of years, that experience of the river and learning that knowledge and hard skills that we were learning was enough to prepare us to arrive at the sea. But that's no longer the case. Now students are very nervous about that river letting out into the sea because it's such a different world. There's so many options. We all have heard the stats that many of the jobs that people are going to be working in 10 or 20 years don't even exist yet. So how do we prepare students for it? And how do we expect them to feel ready for it when we don't know what it looks like? So in 2018, right before COVID, as you mentioned, I took off from Canada for a year of research around the world, 12 countries over 12 months, self-funded research to really try to understand how can we prepare students? Where is the world of work going, and how can we get them ready? And we met with several experts in many different countries, even people who study this in Harvard and MIT, and we all came up with a similar answer. We have no idea what's coming, really. So how do we prepare young people when we don't know what's coming? When we don't know which direction they should swim in the sea? What we did come back with is 4 challenges that they're going to have to work through for the rest of their lives. So we may not have the answer, but we feel like we came back with the right questions. And those 4 questions that they're going to have to answer are these. Can I find work? So what does that look like? What type of creativity do I need to envision how my skills translate into work? How do I find work? That's going to be the first challenge, the main challenge that most people will start with. The next challenge is, can I stay engaged in that work? So for many years, decades, it was somehow the employer's responsibility to ensure that their employees were engaged, but that's not the case anymore. Now it's the responsibility of the person working to make sure I stay engaged. So how can I choose something that I'll be interested in, not a job, but an area of work that I'll be interested in for 30 or 40 years? And then the next challenge is, how do we stay relevant? Because work is going to evolve. really quickly throughout their career. So how do we prepare students to continue to evolve in that work and stay relevant? So how can my job touch technology? What's the next thing coming with technology that I can learn that will help me get ready for whatever is coming? I just need to stay a little bit ahead of it, not 20 years ahead of it, just a little bit ahead of it, so that my job or my skills don't become irrelevant in the time that I'm working. The last challenge is, can I stay healthy? Because sometimes we can get so wrapped up in work. We saw this in many countries that we studied around the world, where they just lost themselves in their work and weren't able to stay healthy mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And so how do we prepare students to stay healthy throughout the lifetime of their career? So even though we came back and didn't have an answer, we came back.
We didn't have an answer.
We didn't have an answer. We came back with 4 questions that will really help young people prepare. So how do we now incorporate that into the education system? My insight on that is this. As we mentioned earlier, leadership. What are those skills, such as, or those competencies, such as critical thinking, or understanding my values, understanding how I can be a positive, contributing global citizen in the world, understanding how to navigate decisions. Navigate decisions, that's a tough one, and that's really the way we teach leadership, is this. If I'm on a path and I ask myself, can I see where this goes in 1 month? Do I like where that goes? If the answer is no, leadership allows you to make a different decision. Personal leadership allows you to navigate a different way for yourself. Leading others allows you to navigate and then invite other people with you. So how do we teach young people in school to navigate life continually? It's no longer one path, one direction, 40 years. It's now going to be continual navigation, using my values, using my skills, and making those decisions. So critical thinking, creativity, commitment, knowing what it means to be a positive global citizen. That's where we need to start focusing the conversation in schools, because they'll need that throughout their life. So that's the one big shift I believe needs to happen in education from what I've been learning and seeing. The second is this idea of lifelong learning, because in Canada, we say K to 12. Do you say that here? K to 12, kindergarten to grade 12, yeah. And for the longest time, the message has been schools K to 12 or K to university. And then you're done, then you're free, then you can go out into the world and work and do all those things. And that's just not the case anymore. We have to switch the conversation to lifelong learning, to stay relevant, to stay engaged, because work's going to change so fast throughout their career. So one of the experts we met with, Dr. Jonathan Schaefer, said we need to switch the conversation from K to 12 to K to gray. K to gray. So until you have gray hair and beyond, you need to keep learning. So how can we help young people select something to learn about that they want to learn about for that long? Not a job that they need to do for 40 years, but a way, an area to work in that they can be interested in for 30 or 40 years. So that's what I believe the 2 biggest shifts in education need to be. Shifting to leadership competencies, virtues, and life navigation. That's on the one side. And the second being that it doesn't end when you graduate. It will continue, so choose something that you'll continually want to learn about. So those are the 2 major shifts. So when we look back at the river, still being school, still think students should enter the river of school and continue through, but how can we make that experience along the river one that when they get to the end, when they get to the sea, they no longer feel lost and unprepared when they arrive there, feelings of anxiety and apathy of the river letting out into the sea, but instead, how can we prepare their educational experience so that when they get to the sea, they know how to swim, and they know how to continually swim throughout their time after their K to 12 or K to degree is done.
But your young, what is it? Young
Leaders dot
Young
world.
Leaders dot.
I know the dot's really throwing you. Dot in the middle of our name. It's really
Young Leaders
confusing.
dot world is basically designing practical ways to help students, just help young people do this navigation.
Right.
But as you correctly say, there are two stages in their lives, in people's lives, when they have to meet the unknown. One is graduation, okay. And the other one is midlife loss of work, midlife return to the job market because of post-maternity, because a woman had to give birth and, to a child, and it is coming back to work. How does she find work? I mean, what are the practical ways you can guide, you can help adults, in other words, in this way, in this endeavor? You know.
It's a great question, and this is what we discovered would be the challenges of the future of work, not necessarily strictly for youth. These 4 challenges, as you rightly mentioned, are going to come up throughout our careers. Maybe we can, all look at those 4 challenges and say, oh, I'm at that one right now. But 3 years ago, I was dealing with disengagement or poor health, but now I'm dealing with, can I stay relevant? And so if we can always know those 4 challenges will keep kind of arriving throughout our careers, we can start to think ahead. So for example, as a teacher, I started to ask, how do I stay relevant and engaged as a teacher? And so for me, that answer was moving into leadership and using YouTube as a way to teach.
Using what?
YouTube.
YouTube.
Right. Good. So how can I create videos that are engaging for kids, that they enjoy watching, that I enjoy making? So now I'm re-engaged, and I'm also a little bit ahead of the relevancy because everybody ended up going online. And so if you know those 4 questions, you can always
apply
stay ahead. Yep.
We have a little bit more than 2 minutes. Oops. I want to ask you something more. How do we incorporate the leadership training you want to give in a mass scale? How do we introduce it to the educational system of countries? Is, for example, the IB program, that is international program now, very applicable in many, many countries, is that a way to introduce this kind of liberal education, this sort of self-reflective learning way to bring these skills to children in a wider scale? Yeah,
so the IB program, the International Baccalaureate program, I have experience teaching in for about 7 years, and it's a great setup in the sense that built into it is critical thinking, risk-taking, reflection, global citizenship, all things that not just young people need to know, we all need to know. And so it's built right into the program. It's not the only way to build those things in, but it's certainly a program that is ready and built in for sure. But outside of the IB, because not all schools are IB or have access to IB curriculum, we know that. So outside of that, those same competencies and skills of critical thinking, all the things we mentioned, that's where we need to start incorporating those into our school system. So it takes a lot of teacher training, because it's breaking down the models of education that maybe we've had for a long time, to look at other things now maybe being priorities as well.
Good. Yeah. I'm tempted to ask if there's any question from the audience, and I'm thankful that there isn't, because we really don't have any time left. So.
We timed that perfectly.
Okay. Thank you, Carla.
What a pleasure. What a pleasure.
It was a pleasure talking with you.
Yes,
very
thanks
much
so much.
This is a very inspiring program.
Thank you.